Experience often feels like a sequence of random collisions. We navigate a world of chaotic variables, trying to identify some semblance of control. In theology, we contrast this unpredictable motion with an immovable order, the character of God. In Chapter 13 of his Systematic Theology, Wayne Grudem organizes these attributes into a structural framework, identifying the specific link between divine purpose and human stability. To construct this model, we have to define 3 core concepts in a specific sequence. We begin with the foundation, God's will. Next, we examine the structural integrity, his perfection. Finally, we reach the apex of the design, his blessedness. We are examining the logic that connects a God who determines all things to the existence of human happiness. To see the connection, we must first analyze the mechanics of the will. We define God's will as the source code of reality. It is the active determination of everything that exists. Before any event can occur, this substrate must be in place. In Grudem's text, Ephesians 1:11 states, "God accomplishes all things according to his will." The Greek phrase ta panta means everything in creation. Grudem notes the word translated accomplishes, energeo, suggests continual cosmic activity. God continually brings about everything in the universe. Think of the pairing of energeo and ta panta like a mathematical equation. It behaves as a continuous function, f of x, that covers the entire domain of real numbers. There are no gaps in the graph. God's action is not an isolated point on a timeline. It is the continuous baseline upon which all of reality operates. This scope raises questions about human agency. Kings and rulers make real decisions with consequences, but as Grudem outlines, they move their pieces on a board that God himself is tilting. Human authority exists within God's set parameters. This applies even to the most difficult aspect of God's will, the existence of suffering. To test the strength of this framework, we have to look at the events connected with the crucifixion of Jesus. Grudem examines how the early church understood the conspiracy against Jesus in Acts 4. They prayed, noting that Herod, Pilate, and the crowd did whatever God's hand and plan had predestined. The Greek word for whatever is hosa. In mathematics, the summation operator, the capital sigma, takes a series of volatile variables and calculates them into a single outcome. Hosa functions the same way here. The ambition of Pilate, the mockery of Herod, and the rage of the crowd were calculated into one intended result. The most chaotic variables in history are eventually summed up into God's unified, predestined plan. He remains in control of the equation. Return to conversational pace. To distinguish God's action from mere mechanics, we must identify the difference between his necessary will and his free will. God necessarily wills his own existence and his own nature. However, he freely willed the creation of the universe. He did not need to paint this specific canvas. He chose to do so. When God freely chooses an action, he executes it through his omnipotence, his infinite power. He has the capacity to achieve whatever he decides to do. But God does not hoard this power. He delegates structured versions of it to human systems. He assigns authority to the family, the church, and civil government to reflect his character. By structuring finite power through humanity, God allows us to actively participate in his governance. Using power justly reflects his character and brings him glory. We move now from the foundation of the will to the structure of God's character, perfection. Theologically, perfection means possessing all excellent qualities completely, lacking no desirable trait. God is the ceiling of excellence. There is no missing piece to his nature. There is no revision, no possible upgrade. He is completely full. Because God is perfect, we must address the modern objection that a God who acts for his own glory is essentially a cosmic narcissist, seeking attention to feed an ego. Narcissism is the love of a flawed self. But since God is perfect, for him to love himself is to love the highest good in existence. To value anything else above his own perfect character would be a form of idolatry. Consider the alternative. If God's joy required human performance to be complete, he would be an insecure deity with an emotional void. our standing before him would be tied entirely to our ability to keep him happy. Instead, God's complete self-delight serves as a safety net. We are not here to prop up a fragile ego. We are invited to participate in a secure and overflowing joy. This brings us to the apex, blessedness. This attribute describes God's profound self-delight. In 1 Timothy 1:11, the text uses the specific Greek word makarios, meaning happy. God's blessedness means he delights fully in himself and in all that reflects his character. Think of makarios mathematically. In an equation where our praise is the output and our actions are the input, God's internal happiness is the constant variable, the K. It never shifts based on the input. Because God is happy in his complete excellence, we arrive at the attribute of beauty. Beauty is the sum of all desirable qualities. It is the attribute that makes us actually want God. Every good thing we desire, justice, peace, love, are fractured pieces of God's unified beauty. They are the individual colors of the spectrum. Fulfillment is found not in chasing individual fractured colors, but in tracing them back to the white light of God's perfect character. The completed framework is now clear. God's will provides the foundation, his perfect character the structural integrity, and his blessedness the apex. This clarifies a relationship. When God rejoices in creation, he recognizes the attributes mirroring his own nature. This removes the pressure to generate our own inherent righteousness. Our role is to be a clear mirror, reflecting the goodness already existing in him. God's will ensures the universe has a specific purpose. His perfection ensures that purpose is flawless. Head to the comments and answer one of our 3 pinned questions. How does understanding God's sovereign will change the way you pray during suffering? How do you practically distinguish between God's perfection and his beauty? And why is God's independence from our performance good news for your daily life? To keep building a solid theological framework, hit subscribe and join us for the next chapter. Thanks for watching Visualized Theology.